o'clock. First item on the agenda is public input. If there's anyone that needs to address the board on anything that's not on the agenda, including personnel items, please come forward. It's not look like we have anybody, so we will move on to delegations. The next item we have is the Board of Representatives from the Dakota Reptile to discuss the hourly pool rental rates for team practices.
Kevin, you want us to talk now, or?
Actually, during the executive session, it's going to be just the board discussing. So during this time would be if you can come up with the microphone, please, that'd be great.
Sure. I'll have that. Thanks. Name's Ryan Rammel. I'm a member of, the Dakota Reptile swim team. We moved to Mitchell, I think, about 5 years ago. My son Owen swims with Dakota Reptile now for the last, he's 3, now he's going on in the 4th year. And so some of the things with, with the whole build a pool component, I wasn't really part of that whole discussion originally, when it came into play. But one of the reasons why, I want to come and just start the opportunity to have the discussion is just to start the process of talking about some of our pool rental rates and kind of where we are ultimately as a team, in this environment, that we're in. Currently, we do not have a swim coach with Dakota Reptile. And this summer, we were able to sort of duct tape and super glue it with, some college coaches throughout. But of course, those college kids ultimately go back to their, St. John's, Northern. They kind of navigate back to their college bases. And now it's ultimately leaving us with a little bit of a gap. And ultimately in the environment, Walt is here with me as well. We've been going through that recruitment process, for a coach. And, just they're just not hanging out on trees in the city of Mitchell or in the state of South Dakota for that matter. And so a lot of our honest to God recruitment has and our individuals that have sort of even entertained coming here have been from afar, and a lot of East Coast folks wanting to get out of the hustle and bustle. But the reality is when they come back to taking a look, we've even flown a couple of them in now. They take a look at Mitchell, South Dakota and the environment, and I don't know if it's the cold or what it is, but and let's face it, some of the reality is the money that we can offer. We are the only state in the country that does not offer swim as a school-sanctioned sport, and so what that does is it sort of takes off some of the ancillary benefits that you can offer a coach, for your 401k, you're getting through your school system, your retirement, some in the other states are getting teacher retirement type, benefits, and health insurance, that's the big one. Health insurance is the big one, and that we're really fighting against in order to actually compete in that market. And so that's sort of a state of affairs, no club. And right now, as you know, we have no pool. As we kind of approach this, I don't fault the city for any of this, because at the end of the day, we want that pool to be the best thing, for the kids and for the community. And we deservedly need to have what we paid for. So that's no fault of anybody's here. I just know that's the sort of the life we're living, so to speak. And swimming in the state of South Dakota has started for most clubs. And the result of not having a pool and not knowing where that pool will open, even if it is a month from now, I would say probably at a minimum from what I've heard is we're at least a minimum of a month out. And with that, every other club out there has already started swimming. My son, for example, is already swimming in Sioux Falls, through the Sioux Falls swim team. Don't want to have that, don't Don't want that necessarily to be the option, but that is the option if you want to do competitive swimming at this point in our city. And through the state of affairs, with this sort of perfect storm, no pool, no coach, we are at an ultimate crossroads with our club right now. And looking at the financials, I'll just say it, we're broke. I can't afford a coach because of a handful of different things, and so a lot of that is ultimately some of our swim pool rental rates. I pulled the financials of what we've typically have paid the city over the last 4 years, and it's up there anywhere from about $32,000 to $40-some thousand a year in pool rental rates. And so over the last 4 years, give or take maybe a few there, just looking at my profit loss statement, I would say we've actually paid to the city in the last 4 years over $150,000 just in renting the pool, renting the facilities for our swim meets, and having those sorts of events, whether or not it's the shelter for the outdoor Hitchcock pool, or the rec center in general. And I'm not going to necessarily argue about the agreement, but I will just, my comment to it is, in this perfect storm, that we're currently facing is one that's hamstrung the club to a point of almost non-existence.
What's your average number of students per year, Ryan?
Well, the average number of students this last winter season was about 90 kids. The last summer season was 88, and when I'm going to go back one. Last summer season was 88 kids. My winter season was 90 kids. This summer season was 76 kids. I don't know, guesstimate, and I'm going to throw this, Walt. I'm going to guess. I'm going to probably. Well, I mean, if there is no pool, I'll have about 25 kids. And at that point, if there is no pool this season, we'll be defunct. I don't know. I'll probably have to, we'll probably have to look through, some different opportunities to maybe wind down the club. But I really don't want to do that. That'd be, honest to God, last resort through the process.
So there's a number of them driving now. Would you foresee a good share of them returning when the pool opens?
At this point, that's a hard one to gauge. Without being able to afford a coach and bring one in, I would probably say no. Your chances of probably getting those families to come back at that moment, they'll probably come back. I know I'll probably still, I still maintain my rec center membership. Once a pool opens, I will still, I'll have my kids swim, and I'll probably self-coach at that point. But it'll probably be, some augmenting from the coaching staff there. But there's probably a good share of them that have already paid their dues, looking forward to the season at this point. So a couple things with that. We make a chunk of our money on swim meets, during the season. And so in October, we had a swim meet sanctioned. I should say approved to be on the sanctioned board. That can no longer take place. And, give or take, how many teams, attend or don't attend. I mean, it honestly means about anywhere, about $10,000 to a club, which is pretty significant when, I've got $2,000 in the bank account. And you factor in, there's sort of a diminishing returns component to, just like anything, it's just like pricing a commodity, right? When you're trying to maximize your sales. I'm trying to, to not price the families out of the market to say, I don't want to do, I don't want to, swimming's not worth, $1,500 a year for my families, I can maybe command that market in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, but in Mitchell, South Dakota, you can't. And at some point, we are about, with our older kids, we are about $700 a year, for the older kids to swim. Probably need to look at raising some of that, but that's where we are at in current state market. And it's hard to raise those rates when we don't have a pool to offer them to swim at this moment.
If the pool were open right now, what would you say is that magic bullet number in terms of affordability for lane or pool rental?
That magic bullet number. So we have a twofold problem, okay? So the twofold problem really inherently is one, pool rental to the city of Mitchell. The second, elephant in the room, component, right now that we're facing as a club is we have a build-a-pool requirement, owed on the bond of $1 million. We've paid $800,000 as a club off to that. Ultimately, that last $200,000 was committed already. We've had business owners and individuals commit to that last $200. That last $200, once COVID hit, people ultimately withdrew their donation or their pledge. That's a great, thank you for helping me find the words there. But so those pledges ultimately were out there. They were secured over the 5 years. Year one went off without a hitch. Year two went off without a hitch. Year three went without a hitch. Year four, approaching COVID, it got tight. People started pulling their pledges back during that COVID time, and it really caused then the families to ante up the last portion of that last $800,000. And we went out and reached out to other members of the community, and by their gracious donations, we were able to make that last payment. We're in a different environment now. Those pledges are all but washed up. That the well's tapped for a lot of different things, and so it's going to end up putting $200,000 over the next 5 years back onto the swim club. So that's about $40,000 a year for the next 5 years. So with that being said, and where we've been at, paying pool rental, on top of it, and in the environment we're at with not being able to afford a coach. I'm going to tell you, kind of to follow up with your question, I'm asking probably for a reprieve temporarily, at least till maybe even for the next 5 years, till I can pay the city off of that other side
Of the $200,000.
of the $200,000 at a minimum, and then coming back to then. Otherwise, I'm not sure. I'm just honestly not sure if there's anything left over to pay to even hire a coach at that point. And so to even go out and, I'd hate to sign one on and then say, sorry, but I can't afford to pay you now.
Well, I mean, even if a parent was coaching, then you'd expect to have to pay something for the pool, yet is the pool worth more because there's a different coach? I'm sorry if I'm jumping in and.
I don't know how to necessarily answer that. I get what you're saying. The pool is worth, you're just saying the pool is worth what it's worth with the coach or without the coach. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes, in one respect. You wouldn't need as many lanes, if you look at it in that respect, if you were running with 2 lanes instead of a whole pool, so that per lane rate, whether that was adjustable or not, at least you could go with a number of lanes versus an entire pool. But I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, I mean, you have different approaches in different towns. I know, in some of these towns, they'll rent the entire pool out for a set amount, let's say $15 an hour, $14 an hour, I don't know. But, they'll ultimately get allocated that entire space for that set amount of time. And what they do then is they run, one set of kids on lane 1 through 5, and the other set of kids, on lanes 6 through 8, 6, 7, and 8. Just basing on numbers or however you slice it. And they just don't have to go into the night, with more lanes, so to speak. So, but I don't know, Walt, if there's anything else you want to maybe just kind of, bring up. I'm trying to think if I'm.
Well, we had talked about this the other day.
Can I ask you to step up?
Oh, sorry.
It's a
Yep.
public meeting. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nope.
Sorry.
So it's transmitting and it helps her with taking minutes
Nope,
afterwards.
that's fine.
Yeah, no problem.
We had talked the other day, we don't know the percentage on how many of our kids had rec memberships. So essentially, they were being charged multiple times, if that makes sense. My kid has a rec membership, so I'm paying that monthly, and then we're paying to rent the pool for practice, and then they'll build a pool, so it's almost like a threefold for this one kid to swim.
Thank But I hear your respect. That pool, they wouldn't necessarily have access to if they weren't in the Reptile program.
You're right, that's correct. So, my daughter's driving, actually, my wife is driving my daughter to Sioux Falls to swim, and I do not want to do that. We can stay part of Riptide because Huron's with us, but we got to drive to Huron. Our big hang-up is, we don't have enough money to hire a coach, and we're not going to get these kids back from Sioux Falls or from Huron until we have a coach. So
it doesn't matter if the pool opens.
No,
Is this
no, it doesn't.
conversation a moot point at this? Really? Because our board is going to discuss rates, is my assumption,
Sure.
tonight, and they can't make a decision because that's not on the agenda, but the discussion is certainly going to happen in terms of what can happen for making it more acceptable or easier for the club to continue on. But if you don't have a coach,
Well, it's the chicken or the egg, mentality. I don't have the money to hire the coach because I'm paying it all to the city to rent the pool. So I don't, and I'm paying my rec membership for the last 5 years, 4 years, so, to swim in that pool. So I don't know, it's a concept where, I'll probably still swim in there. I'm just gonna do it on my own time now. But I think the important aspect of this is, and I think that's where I think the city discussion really needs to take is, the part that brings the money back into our bid, tax, our bed, for the hotel, side of the house, and our taxpayer money, when we bring in those, we bring in, anywhere from 2 to, last year, heck, we brought in almost 4 or 5 different meets that year. And so, that's where you end up losing, the city loses in this deal. Not only one, you got your youth going to another town. This is why I moved to Mitchell, South Dakota, because my kid can play football and then he can go to swim practice. He can play basketball and he can go to swim practice. And he can do these things, ultimately simultaneously within season. And now it sort of takes some of that, flair off of, what we like in this community. I hate to see our kids go down the road. It just doesn't make sense. It really honestly makes no sense. And it honestly doesn't make sense to not bring those tax dollars into this community when we have the opportunity to do so. And the best part of it is swim is in the off-season from your baseball, it kind of captures some of these in-between moments for our hotel folks and those tax dollars as well, when otherwise we're not bringing anything into the city during those times. And so it's honestly a sweet spot for the city in that regard. And I had a chance to look over, just, look through some of this, and if you look at our pool rental rates, in comparison, we're extremely high, for the most part. And we've been paying that over the last 4 years. And it's reached a breaking point for the club, unfortunately.
And as you mentioned, a combination of things. This is just the rate being charged, it's the fact there's no coach to be able to pay, to run with the kids.
We had a coach, a very good coach, and he left for family reasons. That was it. He had to go take care of his grandma. But I'm afraid if we have to shut the Riptide down because we can't hire a coach and we can't afford to build a pool and the rates, what happens if somebody comes back in a year or a different coach is like, hey, I want to start one up, got a beautiful pool, facility's great. At the current situation, I don't think anybody's ever going to tie into it because they can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know who has to hear this, but, you know, we've talked about, you know, you go to the hockey rink and there's banners everywhere. People are paying for it. You go to the baseball field, banners everywhere. The swimming pool, there's nothing, you know, so is that a way for us to try and generate some money so that we can get a coach? You know, there's been some ideas kicked around of like, how can we generate some money so that we can hire a coach and get our kids that are driving to Sioux Falls and driving to Huron back? So we're not giving up, but right now, you know, the 200,000 is hanging out there and the city's not gonna, we're expected to pay it. Well, if things, I don't know how we're gonna pay it, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna be
Like I said,
real tough.
it's a twofold problem,
Yeah.
this and that.
Yeah.
How much do you guys have you been paying annually in lane rent?
About $40,000.
Well,
It's about like,
Between 32, I think was the lowest, and around 40.
It's about 32,000. You know, it works out to be a payment every year to the city of about $40,000 is roughly. But that also, you know, I'd say about 32,000 of that comes in the way of actual pool rental. And then you got you know, some of your ancillaries like renting the Hitchcock, you know, shelter and then renting the rec center for our meets and, you know, at 1,300 times, you know, the one year we did 4 or 5, you know, you take that times, you know, it was almost $6,000, for example, that year. But, you know, yeah, just for the basic semantics, it's approximately about 40,000 a year is what we pay. And, you know, just when you use only 5 lanes and then you have that many, you know, those kids over the course, we typically during the winter, we run from about, 3:15 to about 8?
8 o'clock.
Yeah,
Kevin, yeah, so.
and then the other thing, are you guys basically saying that if you ask for a reprieve, without the reprieve, you can't afford a coach? Is that what it boils down to?
It's part of the issue, a major part of the issue.
And you guys said you do not know how many, like if you're 90 last winter, you don't know how many of those had a rec membership.
I don't know that number.
I do a survey monkey, but I mean, I don't, if Kevin can help me find.
If you gave me a list of like how many, or who all your who's on your team?
I would
get
say
you that.
I would say it's at least 50%, or dang close. But
But it's only our Mitchell site, of course,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
but Well, I can get you that information, and if you'd help, otherwise I'd have
That'd be-
to reverse it and survey monkey.
you know, because when we brought that one guy in from, wherever he was from, what DC area, I had called the rec center and I said, hey, we got this potential coach coming in. I'd like to get some kids together. Well, yeah, as long as they have rec membership or they pay their $5, of course. So we used 4 lanes and we didn't pay anything because every kid that was swimming had a rec membership. So then, you know, if I'm thinking to myself, well, why are we paying $55 an hour for 5 lanes total?
And I think that was a cooperative thing.
I understand that. I totally understand that. But then I think back like, well, if we have, let's say we have 40 kids swimming in Mitchell and 20 of them have rec memberships, why don't we just pay for enough lanes so that the 20 that don't have a rec membership? Or we just say, hey, you know, and can we require, I know it said somebody, one town, you know, they require all their families. Well, I don't think that's unreasonable if the rates are,
Yeah,
you
we
know.
did some quick calculating too.
Yeah, for sure.
At 50 memberships, we're bringing around $17,000.
yeah, so
Which is less than half of what was currently being charged, but is that the adequate amount? We don't know, that's up to
Yep,
the board
of course.
discussion, so we won't imply anything, but it sounds like you're asking for no payment, or would you, go ahead.
Well, I'm asking for no payment until, I mean, one, based upon just some of the historic, I don't want to call it overpayment. It was agreed upon, but it just, it ultimately put us in a spot, and I wish I was on the board, years ago, so I could probably hash through some of these finances, and I could have addressed this probably a year and a half ago, but I was not. So I'm sort of faced with that now, going through some of that and looking at where things essentially are headed. The reality is we want a long-term solution, okay, right? I mean, this is, because I don't want to have to come back in here every single year. What I want to do is I want to be able to financially, be able to support a coach. And not only just support a coach, I want to grow the club, right? Because where we're at right now, even with we had probably the most members we've ever had at 90, and we're broke. And so we're going to have to come up with some, and you got to look at $700 a year for swimming. You do the quick math on that. That brings in what, about $50,000? And the other part's fundraising. Meets. I'm paying, and when I don't have meets, I can't do that. And so, but the long-term effect of this is I want to be able to support a coach long-term. So if ultimately we have these issues again, because as we know, people are transient, opportunity exists at Morningside College, Northern, wherever. My coach goes, it sometimes can be a feeder system. So we have to be able to financially weather some of these things and not be in this position, because the reality is I'd like to hire an assistant coach, so you have some gap stops. I don't have to swim till 8 o'clock every single night with everybody. Is there some, that we could maybe look at more lanes, to thin down the amount of time that families have to be out. Coaches have to be, coaching into the night. So some of those sorts of things have to go through our thought process as we recruit and retain, adequate coaching. But if I'm going to maintain, a minimal amount just to get by every single, and we don't have the opportunity to, just become financially solvent, within our own means to hire, weather the next storm, it's all for naught. So, but we do this as our families, right? We've got to put money in the bank account to weather these storms, and a nonprofit organization is no different. And at the end of the day, if it means we aren't successful and don't have it, then we don't have the taxpayers' money back, that money back into the coffers through the backside. So.
And the city side, they're either sitting there with a pool with nobody in it, or there could be somebody using it who's got the potential for bringing money back in again.
Yep.
And
You got the idea.
And then they also have to weigh in what people are paying to use the ice arena, what people are paying to use the baseball and softball fields and soccer fields. So it's part of the discussion we'll be having tonight.
Yep, and I understand that. I just wanted to, thanks for the opportunity to kind of lay down the land, and I understand there's some equity stake here with all the other folks, so.
Just to summarize for me, you're looking to reduce the lane fee, and you think with that's reduced, you'll still be able to make the capital fee, or not?
Well, it kind of comes into the, if I'm paying you, I can't pay that. If I pay that, I can't pay you. The reality is what I love for a reprieve on both ends of this till we can afford it. Yeah, that'd be the best case scenario. I wish I could give you a perfect answer there, but I'm starting here because I know that's a different battle altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got one. So with the Huron, how many kids come down from Huron to swim and practice at the rec center on do they come down to all the practice?
No.
The kids that are just practicing here are just Metro kids.
And
Just
and out of our 90, it's like,
20, 25.
yeah, that Huron only has 20, 25, 30.
They don't come to practice
No,
here, they just-
they practice up
The
there.
coach was split between here and there, or,
Well, they have a site coach, she would be the assistant,
and
but,
the person here would write the
Yep,
practices, and that
that's
person
correct.
would facilitate.
yep.
Yep.
So, yeah, but we get all of them, anytime we have a meet here, every one of them is here with their families and stuff, so.
Yeah, any indoor facility meets, we've got a great facility, so we do it in Mitchell, South Dakota.
And usually we'll do because when you have two towns, you gotta kind of work together. Usually we do our indoor meets here, because our indoor facility is amazing. And the outdoor facility up there is really nice. So we do our outdoor meets up there and indoors up here. We're planning on having two of them this year,
Yeah,
so.
And again, they aren't able to vote on a decision tonight, but there'll be some lively discussion at the end of the board meeting. And ultimately, I believe they'll have some sort of a decision before the pool opens again, because our next board meeting is in early October, and that should be, I don't want to even predict when the pool will open.
yeah. And like I said, long-term, do I see it as, am I asking for on behalf of the swim club, an indefinite reprieve? No, I mean, we want to pay our fair share and our fair due. But like I said, as COVID is kind of taken its way, and the perfect storm at this moment in order to keep this thing alive and going, so we can recruit, we're faced with asking for this right now. Thank you.
Thank you both for coming in.
Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Without any, we'll have to have that approved. Move on, we don't have Pat here to accept, so I guess it's minutes.
Just move it to the October meeting.
A motion to accept, I have a second. Second. A motion and a second to accept, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carried. Financial reports.
We won't say that the campground is having a boon year, but last year was a boon year with people having been cooped up the year before, but it's still a very good year. Any questions on other portions of the budget as far as the reports? We're fairly on track with most areas. There were some, how should we say, I don't want to say excessive expenses, but out of the ordinary expenses, again, at the campground and with things going on out at the complexes with the two sunshades and the outdoor pool with the boiler. But there's really, beyond that, there weren't any out of the ordinary expenses. I guess you could put fuel and fertilizer cost into that, but
Is there enough time left in this camping time left in this year to hit our budget number for
I would expect that there's probably not.
Yeah. I would think, so is this the time of year we're probably getting pretty close to what we're gonna get for that?
Yeah, there'll be a little bit coming in yet, 5 to 10% will come in yet in September, and that'll be about the wrap of it.
So on the bills, there was 27,000, was that the boiler for the, I believe it was a water heater, was that the boiler at the pool? We're seeing, I didn't write down the page, I'm sorry. It's 47. Right there. It's water heater, 20,
That was probably for the campground.
that was the campground one, okay. And I think there was like 9, so that was just for the water heater, or was that just for the work that went into?
I believe that was the water heater and the work, but it may not have been. No, that was just the water heater itself.
Yeah, that was the water heater
Then we had-
and the labor to put it in, the water heater itself. The
Then
gas
we-
line stuff, we worked with Northwestern to install that. So there's not much.
Thank you. And then there was 90-some thousand for the ice arena. I'm assuming that had to do with the new compressor. I think-
9,211.
Oh, I thought it was 90. Maybe it was less than, as I said, I just skimmed through it.
We had when they came and turned on the new compressors, there was a leak in the old compressors. So they fixed a seal kit, and with labor with that was $9,211.
That refrigerant that they had to add, was it 2 canisters?
Yep, 2 canisters, each canister is $3,622. So that was $7,244. Labor was $800, so that brought it up to $9,200.
Must have said a decimal place off when I looked.
And that's unanticipated expenses.
Yes. Okay.
That's right at the very top. American Marine, 97,000.
That was the new compressors back in
Okay. So I can't thought.
August.
Yeah, Reptile?
Yep.
Yeah. And we just paid the last 5%. I don't know if it's on there.
Actually says American Arena Products,
Yeah.
all American. And that was an expected capital
Yeah.
project.
I just wanted to clarify. I just figured that's what it was, but.
I don't know if
The last 5% bill was on there, and we also, I don't, probably, no, because I just turned it today, but the last payment for the turf, I just turned it today, that was $18,000. We finally got the 3 bases that they owed us. So I was holding on to that last one.
Now that the season's over.
Now that the season's over, we got our 3 bases, and the last payment was turned in today for the turf. We were at about, for the total project, just over 409,000, and we had 411,000 budgeted.
You held 3 bases for 17,000?
18,000 I held them, yep.
Or vice versa, you held the 18,000 until they got the 3 bases to us.
Correct.
Nobody else has any questions except the motion? Approve the bills? Or financial reports, I suppose we should say. A motion and a second to approve the financial reports. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Abstaining? Okay, sorry, I missed it. Motion passed. Department reports. We got Kevin first.
Yep, so we're underway with our fall, winter programs. Football's about 2 or 3 weeks in. We had good numbers for that again. We start our men's flag tonight. We ended up, actually I put 10 in here, but we actually ended up with 11. I think 8 of those are from MTC, so that's good that they still are heavily involved in it. And we're taking registration for all of our other stuff right now. The youth volleyball will start up next Monday. We're close to 80 on that again, which we had about 84 last year, so we'll probably be at that or better. Basketball will be starting after that in October. Our swim lessons, obviously, we're going to have to adjust that. Our first session was supposed to start the end of September. And so as of now, if we can make it to our second session, we'll move our first session to like end of November, early December. So we'll kind of play that by ear. Outdoor Aquatic Center finished up on the 14th of August. Had a good year considering a rough start with the weather. The last week was kind of rough too with the weather as well. So we had a rough June with attendance, but then a really good July, and then kind of an average August. So, but we did finally get the sunshades completed the week after we closed. But it's here and it was up, and hopefully Steve's crews know how to put it up next year. So it's kind of a rush job that they did, but that'll be a nice addition. The rec center, we started school, and so the kids are back. Our after-school program's up and going. Our preschool's up and going, and both of those programs are full. So that's nice. Old pool remodel. We had a pre-construction meeting today. They might start a little bit of that as far as like demoing the ceiling and stuff like that. Maybe a little bit of that in sometime in October, November, but the majority of the work will get started up in January. So they have the winter to work on that. The hold up for that is going to be the HVAC. That's still a 52-week out deal. So it probably won't be complete until around October 1st of next year with that, unless something changes on the shipping and things like that for HVAC. So, but that'll be nice to see that at least get started, and the room will be kind of complete by spring. Just won't have HVAC in it, so we won't be able to use it yet. But and so that's kind of all we got going on right now. Kind of waiting to hear when we can start the construction back up on the pool. So, any questions?
As far as the pool, so I heard, are they going forward with fixing, or is there conversation with restarting?
Yeah, we're waiting for one test, basically, is what they're doing. They're waiting for one test to come back. They're hoping and they think that test is going to come back fine, and then hopefully hopefully it'll get here this week, that test, and they can kind of decide on some things here in the next week, and then they're ready to start right away. But it's all determined on that test. So can't really say one way or the other yet until that test comes back for sure.
The tests were taken just over 6 weeks ago, and at that time they thought it would take 3 weeks for them to come back.
What are we testing? What are we waiting on?
It was the coring test where they drilled through the concrete and took out about probably 4 or 5 inches in diameter and almost the full depth of the concrete.
Testing the quality.
Checking the hardness, yeah, just to make sure it's all good. So, yeah.
Steve, thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
Okay, well, we've been working on winterizing the outdoor pool when we can. Kind of been working that in between other projects and day-to-day maintenance stuff. There's still some irrigation maintenance that we're working on. Spraying weeds yet. Clean up landscape beds. This year, the weeds have just been terrible. Trimming of all the parks and lake access areas. Been working on installing the playground equipment at the Kiwanis Woodlot. We got the footings put in for 2 pieces of equipment. We got it's called the Wego rounds, like a merry-go-round for wheelchair accessible people. We got that in, put together. Now we're kind of on a standstill to get the concrete work done in place, the concrete pad and the curbing, because the rest of the playground gets mounted to the top surface of the concrete. So we're kind of at standstill there. August, September is our busiest months for hauling picnic tables with pre-Sturgis Party, Dakota Fest, Corn Palace Week. Got numerous rentals this month yet. The Colonel Bowl, couple picnics in different areas, different stuff like that. We had to remove 10 trees and stumps for the Public Works Department on their street project on 9th and 10th Street, where they're putting no water sewer mains and redoing the streets. We removed some trees for the wastewater department on North Harmon, between North Harmon and Airport Road, kind of an access easement lot there. They got a line that they wanted to get a contractor in there to do some cammering of their sewer lines. So we had to clear some trees for them. Fall tennis has started, and then just the day-to-day operations. Any questions?
I have a couple. The first one is, there's a pothole about yay big by Vantage Point, and it's like the
In the
base
bike
layer is
trail?
washed out underneath on the bike trail.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
It kind of seems like someone filled it in with sand at one point. Now it's washed out again. And then another one is a few years ago, I don't know if you're the right person for this question, so I apologize if I got it wrong, but we approved bike lanes through the city, like a plan, and we're going to have is it called commingle or
Share the road.
share the road. And I was just,
One side.
yeah, and I was just wondering where we are on that, because I haven't heard an update in a long time. I don't know who.
That Public Works is working on more of that, and we haven't had a bike trail meeting for,
Yeah.
what, a year?
Yeah, at least.
And they've had a steep year. I had a conversation with Joe just a couple days ago on a potential project for next year. He said next year looks a lot better in terms of having the time to deal with some of these things.
Thank you.
All right. At the ball fields, like Kevin said, Park and Rec has started, and tonight's the first night for flag football. They move over from the old soccer fields, and we painted 3 fields on west softball fields. Flag football will be on there tonight. Park and Rec starts over there with their games next Tuesday. Flag football goes on Wednesdays till the end of October. DW baseball and softball has started. Softball hasn't really started yet, just player practices. They just hired a new coach. I believe he's in town. I texted him. I'm going to meet up with him on Friday. They'll go for about 6 weeks. Co-ed, tomorrow night is their last night. We'll be hosting the Special Olympics. They do softball in the west softball fields, and they do bocce ball, a pretty decent size bocce ball court that will mow down on the old soccer fields. That's the 24th and 5th. We're just continuing mowing. Got a bunch of irrigation with the weather. Cleaning, working on fields for practices and games. Out at soccer field, DMU men and women are going. Their season started up. Their last regular season games is the end of October, and then they will host games if they are in the top half of the GPAC or a higher seed, and sometimes that pushes into the first part of November. Mitchell Soccer Association is still going. The youth ends on September 24th. They play on Saturdays. The competitive league ends on October 22nd, and they do not have any games scheduled. They just practice. So mowing and painting out there, irrigation also, and cleaning up. We did get the pump in and installed. Dakota pump, that was, I believe, 2 weeks ago. $7,200 for that pump. But now we can let irrigation run during the night instead of having to come in and do it all during the day. At the ice arena, we got both compressors running. The new ones are working real good. It's been a little warm. We've been a little behind on putting water down just for the fact of it freezing and being, only getting a few coats on a day. But we did, had some guys come in over the weekend and on Monday, so we're going to paint tomorrow. We'll seal them tomorrow and on Friday and start putting lines and logos down on the north side on Saturday.
So if it's over 100 tomorrow, the ice will be hard enough inside to...
Yeah, because when we paint, it's just a real fine mist. We paint it like 3 times, and then you got to seal it very carefully. If you put too much water on it, the paint runs. And we're going to do that right away in the morning on the north side. The south side's building is considerably colder when you walk from the north to the south side. So we'll paint the south side after that. I'm pretty sure we'll be good. If not, we'll just have to seal it on Friday, but we'll start up. We should be done painting the north side by probably 9:30, and then get a couple coats on it with the big boom. But they're really light, just mist, until you can get enough water over the paint, and then you can put a little heavier coats on, and that probably won't be till Friday. So we did have that Freon leak. They did get that fixed. Yeah, we started putting water down. Hockey has a camp the 23rd, I believe. That's a Friday. They go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday for a camp. They're going to start practices on the 1st. Figure skating has some free skate, learn to skate stuff that weekend of the 1st, and they're going to start practices the next weekend. And hockey also is going to have some free skate stuff starting up too. So it's coming quickly, and hopefully the weather turns with it.
I have nothing to add to that.
Next item on the agenda is approval of kitchen lines. We have some changes from...
So as we recollect the discussion last month, where I thought it was going to be the east 8 courts, it will actually be the 2 far east courts, the ones that are furthest over toward the shop, and then the newest 4 courts way to the west, because they already have junior tennis lines on them. And Steve tells me that we already have kitchen lines on, actually on the far east ones, and they're a really kind of a muted gray. And that will be the same plan for the west 4, the new ones. And that's with the grace. Again, we did a courtesy call to the tennis coach to make certain that he was okay with that, and he's fine with it. And it would be just the kitchen lines, not painting all the other lines around the outside. So this is clarification over what we decided last month.
Any questions? Now, I entertain a motion here. So we have a motion and a second to approve the kitchen lines on the 2 far east courts and the 4 far west
Correct.
courts. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carried.
And the timing is still good because Steve wasn't going to find time until probably the first part or middle part of October.
Okay. We need a motion and or executive. Yep.
I motion in the executive session.
We got a motion and a second to enter executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?